came about, because women were so clearly disadvantaged for many hundreds of years. And some would say, in some ways, maybe still are. I think probably great strides have been made towards equality. But if we just look at women's football as a case in point, and I mean, you and I, we often talk about women's football on our other podcast and on
Yeah.
this one, because we like it. We think it's a good spectacle, good to watch. But what is interesting about it is the way they were banned from playing by the FA for 50 years. Now, it's again after the First World War, where they'd done great things in the men's absence. They also played sport. And what I think not many people really know, and I didn't until I saw this, was that women's football after the First World War was bigger and more popular than men's football. Find that hard to believe or not, but it was. And in fact, there was a women's match in 1920 or 21 between somebody called Dick Kerr's Ladies FC against St Helens FC, and they had the spectators numbered 53,000, which was the highest number of spectators attending any event ever since their records had begun. Now, that was a women's football match. Well, the FA then and now, they don't get a good press now, but they couldn't handle this, and they issued a statement which said the game of football is wholly unsuitable to be played by females and ought not to be encouraged. And with that, following this massive crowd that had watched them, and they loved women's football generally in those times, they banned women from having football clubs, from playing football in 1921. Now, that actually was finally lifted in 1971, 50 years later, and that's 54 years ago. So they were not allowed to play football because of the FA, the powers that be there, decided that women, it's not suitable for them to play. So again, you can see how pressure has built up for women's rights, and nowadays, I guess we could say a lot of it has been achieved. I mean, gender roles in relationships, they're more fluid, aren't they? Sometimes a man might stay at home and bring up kids, and the woman goes out to work or whatever, and rightly so, whichever way around they choose to do it. But I suspect that many women would still feel that the gender roles are still a bit stacked in men's favour, just the way it can be perceived. So there's still some way to go. But with regard to the football, more recently, Chelsea women's team, they won a few weeks ago the Women's FA Cup. Do you know how much their prize from the FA was?
No.
£25,000. Now,
What?
a few weeks ago, again, as you well know, 25,000 was the prize, the award they got for winning the Women's FA Cup, right?
What?
From the authorities. Well, just remind me, cuz, which was the men's team that won the FA Cup recently? Oh yes, it was my team, wasn't it? It was Crystal Palace. Well, do you know how much they got? A
Yeah.
men's team to win the FA Cup?
How much?
1.8 million. 1.8 million
Wow.
pounds. So the 25,000 is not much more than 1% of what the men got. Now, the crowd it was a big crowd there, about 48,000 at Wembley to watch Chelsea. Obviously, the men's were about 85,000. That's kind of a full house.
Yeah.
So Chelsea got 25,000. Now, there's another men's competition called the FA Vase, you've probably heard of, and that's a much lesser competition than the FA Cup. You've probably heard of, and that's a much lesser competition than the FA Cup, but still played, I believe, at Wembley. And the winners this year were Warrington Rylands up in Warrington there. And their prize money, bearing in mind Chelsea ladies got 25,000,
Yeah.
the Warrington team, with a crowd of 6,000, got just under £48,000, pretty much double what Chelsea got. Now, I only say these numbers not to have a go at anybody, but it does seem that the odds are stacked against the women's game. Now, the last 5 years, it's come on leaps and bounds. And let's just make the point, in a couple of weeks' time, early July, our England women's team will be setting out to defend their Euros title. So that's going to be a good competition for about 4 weeks for us. I hope football fans across the board will watch that and support our team. And so they've come a long way, but there's not the money invested. People say, well, it's a market force. If not so many people go to the women's game, they can't expect the same salaries. And these things take a long time. But actually, thanks to Sky, the company Sky, who show women's games the last 2-3 years, maybe more, on a regular basis. So they've injected a lot of money into the game. And I guess that will go on as it becomes more popular. In the next 2 years, the WSL, the Women's Super League, is going to have 2 extra teams. So it'll go from 12 to 14, I guess, with the eventual aim of going up to 20, like the Premier League in the men's game. So they are making progress. There's no question about it. There's some very good women's footballers across the board in the WSL and the teams below the main league. So, we talked about suffragettes and the fight to get equality. Today's women's footballers, they're fighting for their equality. And I think it's good for all people who like sport, who like football fans, and who are proud, let's say it, who are proud of our country, proud of England and our teams. Let's support them. Let's support them in the Women's Euros and hope that they actually come back with the bacon sort of thing. So, the women's football, there's a long way to go, but they are getting there. And it's great to see that as time goes by, more money is going into the game, which you never know, it could bring back what they had just after the First World War, when the women's game was more popular than the men's game. Yeah. So quite a thought to finish on that, isn't it?
Yeah. I was just thinking, who is really responsible for suppressing the women's progress? Because you and I, we'll gladly support them, won't we? So
what do you mean? Do you mean football, or do you mean generally women? Generally?
Yeah, I just mean generally. And
well, I think most men support women.